From the start, there was a purpose behind schooling, which had nothing to do with what parents, kids, or communities wanted, but concentrated on what a highly centralized economy and a strong political state was thought to need. What that was can be seen from this excerpt from a speech Woodrow Wilson made to businessmen in 1914. I'm quoting Wilson without changing a word. We want one class of persons to have a liberal education, and we want another class, a very, very much larger class of necessity, to forego the privilege of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks. By 1917, the major administrative jobs across America in schooling were under the control of a group of interests referred to in the press as the Education Trust. At the first meeting of the Education Trust, the attendees included representatives of Rockefeller, Carnegie, Harvard, Stanford, the University of Chicago, and the National Education Association. The chief end of the new education, wrote Benjamin Kidd in 1918, was to, I'm quoting, impose on the young the ideal of subordination. The primary target of the first 30 years of forced schooling was the tradition of independent livelihoods in America. Students were to learn to think of themselves as employees competing with one another for the favor of the boss, not as entrepreneurs like Ben Franklin competing to serve the public. It was believed that only in this way could the menace of overproduction in America be contained. You'd have to, ladies and gentlemen, read into the primary sources, as I spent years reading, to see how often the term overproduction emerges in these discussions of businessmen between 1880 and 1910. They were terrified that the early tradition of America, that people worked for themselves, would continue, and that this would make it impossible for large central corporations. So it had to be put to death. In 1919, Arthur Calhoun's Social History of the Family informed the nation that the child was passing from the family, I'm quoting now, into the custody of community experts. In 1922, Mayor Hylan of New York City, alluding specifically to actions in schools of the Rockefeller Foundation and other corporate interests, said in a public speech that the schools had been seized as an octopus would seize its prey by, quote, an invisible government. You'll find that reference in Diane Ravitch's book, The Great School Wars. In 1929, the famous creator of educational psychology, Edward Thorndike of Columbia Teachers College, announced, I'm quoting, academic subjects are of little value. His colleague at Teachers College, William Kirkpatrick, boasted in his book, Education and the Social Crisis, that the whole traditional system of rearing the young was being made over by experts. Meanwhile, in the project offices of an important employer of those experts, the Rockefeller Foundation, executives were hearing from its president, Max Mason, on April the 11th, 1933, that a comprehensive program was underway to rationalize social control and the control of human behavior. A February 1934 progress report from the Rockefeller endowments asked the question, can we develop so sound and extensive a genetics that we can hope to breed in the future superior men? Just a few months before this report appeared, the executive director of the National Education Association announced that his organization expected, I'm quoting directly now, to to accomplish by education what dictators in Europe are seeking to do by compulsion and force. You can't get it much clearer than that, can you?
Going back to the 5th century in the Collegia in Rome, what elite education is about is one thing. Well, it's several things leading to one thing. The management of crowds, the management of masses. In 1945, in a coal mining town in western Pennsylvania, everybody in 6th grade read Caesar's Gallic Wars in translation, and everybody with ambition in 9th grade read Caesar's Gallic Wars in Latin. Gallia est omnis tuissa in partes tres, coram unum in colut Belgae, aliam aquitani, qui ipsorum nostra. Why do you think we don't spend considerable time on Caesar's Gallic Wars at the moment? I'm really serious here, even though you hear a certain sandbagging consciousness and the sarcasm in my voice. Why don't we read Caesar's Gallic Wars in 2005? What's it about? I'll bet some people here have read it. What's it about?
Imperial Wars, Empire, divide and conquer.
Thank you. It is the textbook of how a small disciplined force can overwhelm a huge, brave force 50 times larger than itself by finding the cracks in the organization and flipping this side, flipping that side, moving, until finally you've got this political, ideological hornet's nest stirred up, where the only way to survive is to hang out with the Romans. That's why it isn't read anymore. It's a textbook. I'll tell you this, you don't go through an elite private boarding school without reading it, but you will go through the best school in Albany, New York, without even hearing that it exists. Let's take another book that used to be in 1945, not read by every elementary school kid, but I'll tell you, huge chunks of it by almost every high school kid, and if you got to college, by every college kid. It was written in 1640. The author was a fellow named Thomas Hobbes, and the book was Leviathan, which contains, among the millions of pulling back the curtain so you can see the machinery, this particular insight. I mean, it's a lot. I'm not doing Hobbes justice by squeezing him down to this. That wherever power seems to exist, it never exists there. Let me repeat that. Wherever power seems to exist. The first time you saw Ronald Reagan or you saw George Bush, you had to have done what everyone else, shake your head and said, I can't believe that guy's in charge. Well, if you'd read Thomas Hobbes, you'd know he wasn't in charge. It's a figurehead position to draw flack. No one's in charge in the Senate or the House either. Those are satellites, subordinate figurehead positions. Take 100 gifted and talented kids out of high school in Albany. You'll be lucky if anybody's heard of Leviathan. I'll bet you $6 to 1 that no one will have read it if one of them's heard of it. How did this happen? Education, as opposed to mere schooling, is partially about the development of an active inner life that strives for transcendence. So it's independent of any material circumstances. And the book I'll assign you to read, if you haven't already read it, is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Here, the wealthiest man in the world, the most powerful man in the world, the Emperor of Rome, writes a book that's still in print that says that nothing money can buy or nothing power can earn has any importance at all. that none of it produces happiness, that all of it produces addictions, that to be free, you need to be free of. Well, take it from Marcus. He was the emperor of Rome, and believe me, if he was still the emperor, he'd make you take it. The second purpose of legitimate schooling has been widely acknowledged in modern times. It's the development of good citizenship. The models for this ideal come out of classical Greece and Rome, where each citizen was thought of as a little sovereignty. All public positions in classical Greece, all of them, general of the armies, water commissioner, whatever you name, were selected by drawing the names out of a hat, or whatever the Greeks wore. I couldn't draw it out of a, that contained the names of all the citizens in the city-state. And if yours came out and it said water commissioner, no one wants to hear, I don't know anything about bringing water to the metropolis. You better learn or you're not a citizen anymore. But let me tell you where that bit of information is not concealed. At St. Paul's, where the presidential candidate John Kerry went, they learned that when they study ancient Greece. At Andover, where the sitting president went, they learned that. At St. Albans, where the Democratic candidate Al Gore in the last election went, they learned that. At Groton, where Franklin Roosevelt went, they learned that. At Choate, where John F. Kennedy went, they learned that. But I've never seen a public school in the United States where the faculty even has a glimmering that that was once so. Doesn't that raise certain speculation about whether it could be so again? While I was laying on the floor of the airport in Newark trying to, the television, when I'm in there at 5:50 in the morning, the television's playing about a little biography of Donald Rumsfeld. That's exactly what I needed to try to go see. But my ear did perk up when it said that after a long lifetime, I mean, he was well into middle age, of always doing government work, suddenly he's picked to be the CEO of some technical corporation. They didn't seem to worry. Is it possible that the people who picked him were aware that you don't have to go through 16 years of postgraduate training to learn how to be a CEO? That it's really about managing people? And that the second job he got for Halliburton, he knew nothing about it all, nor had he any prior experience at all. But Halliburton dropped him right in there. Hey, Don, way to go, man. This developing citizenship, a citizen was an independent agent who decided independently what was in the community's best interests. It had nothing to do with obedience, and it had everything to do with taking a seat at the policy table. Notice that you cannot do that unless you can speak well in front of audiences made up of strangers or even hostile audiences, and unless you can write well and coherently.
The elite private boarding schools, in no particular order, stress the active literacies. I've never seen a school in Canada or the United States, a public school, that stress the active literacies. The term itself is virtually unknown to people, even though a century and a half ago it was a commonly used term in Canada and the United States. It's not reading, it's the ability to speak effectively to any kind of group, and the ability to write effectively to any kind of reader.